Hey, what's going on? This is the Body Punch Podcast, and my name is Naz. Let's talk about UFC 284. UFC 284 happening February 11th, 2023 in Perth, Australia. The reigning defending light heavyweight champion will be taking on Alexander Volkanovski, the featherweight champion of the world. Islam Makhachev coming off a spectacular win against Charles Oliveira, doing what his teammate and mentor Khabib Nurmagomedov did in his career, and now the king of the lightweights. And he's going to be taking on the number one pound for pound king in many people's eyes, Alexander Volkanovski, who's going to be going up in weight and cement himself in history to become a double champion. And what a spectacular event to happen in Perth that all started after Islam Makhachev won the belt against Charles Oliveira. DC called out and told the featherweight champion of the world to come into the octagon, and they had a stare down right after the fight. What a great event. What a great way for it to start. What a fun way for the two greats in the sport currently. Islam Makhachev having a much younger career in the sport, and Alexander having, cemented himself as one of the greats thus far. This is going to be an amazing way for us to figure out who is the greatest fighter currently in the lightweight division. Alexander has teased coming up in weight for a very long time now, and now he's going to do it February 11th. But there's a bunch of other fun fights on this card that I want to talk about. Obviously, the main event is going to be a fun one, Makhachev versus Volkanovski, but the co-main event is an interesting one. Featherweight bout for the interim championship. Alexander being the main event fighter, he's going to have his next challenger be determined in the co-main event. Rodríguez taking on Emmett. Emmett, the hard-hitting featherweight, taking on the slick striker Rodríguez. This is going to be a fun one. First time for Rodríguez fighting outside of Mexico or America. And we're going to see how his body reacts to flying so far away and having to fight in such a different time zone. I've talked about it multiple times in this podcast before, but Fight Island was a big thing that showed me that flying this whole distance, and there was a bunch of protocols that were involved when fights were happening in Abu Dhabi, but flying that whole distance really puts a toll on some fighters' bodies. And we're going to see how Emmett and Rodríguez feel about flying all the way there. Interestingly, just a couple weeks ago, we found out that this fight was happening. And both of these fighters found out that day. So, the February 11th is coming pretty soon. But to find out the day of when the announcement goes live is you got to always be ready if you're in the UFC, because they might call on your name at any point. And a bout like this for the interim championship is not something that you can say no to. Unless you're injured, unless you're really not ready, this is something that you always got to accept. Robert Whittaker taking on Costa. Now we have a new 185-pound champ in Pereira taking out Izzy. I'm assuming, and many reports are saying this, that Israel Adesanya wants that second fight in MMA. We're going to have to see what Pereira wants. We're going to have to see what the UFC wants. But this could determine the next fight for either one of those if it's Israel Adesanya, if it's uh, Pereira, Costa, or Whittaker could be the next middleweight to face off against the champion. What an interesting fight. Both of these fighters are physically, they have the same traits, meaning that they're a little bit shorter for the division compared to everybody else. But the style that they fight and the body types that they have are different. Paulo Costa can TKO you, put the pace on you, has the cardio for days. We saw that in the Yoel Romero fight where he took it to Yoel Romero. Many fighters do not want to do that against the Cuban, the freight train that Yoel Romero can be at some points when he wants to put it on you. But he's going against a wrestler and a slick and unorthodox fighter in Robert Whittaker, meaning that Robert Whittaker will put the angles on you, will fight you his way, will always be moving, will always be, moving in different directions. You see the way that he fights sometimes, and sometimes when he even throws a jab, it's very Dominic Cruz style, meaning that it's so different. The footwork, everything that he puts into his fighting style is so different, and it's going to be a fun one against Paulo Costa. Now, let's look at the rest of the card here. The rest of the card, we talked about the 3 fights at the top of the bill, but we got Justin Tafa, and he's always fun to watch, especially when he's fighting in his home country. Tyson Pedro, same thing. Coming off of a big gap in his career, but then coming back and having a few wins, having a great couple fights. Tyson Pedro is always fun to watch in the light heavyweight division. And then a bunch of other great fights. We got to see how this card fills out a little bit more. This could be it, but let's see who's on the early prelims and all that kind of stuff. But this is what the card looks like thus far. At the top of the bill, we got Islam Makhachev versus Alex Pereira, or Islam Makhachev versus Alexander Volkanovski, excuse me. And then we got Yair Rodríguez versus Josh Emmett. Then Robert Whittaker versus Paulo Costa. And then we got Justin Tafa versus Parker. It's a really good stacked main event. We'll see about the prelims. We know that Jimmy Crute is always there to bring it on, and he's fighting in his home country as well. And he's taking on Menefield, who's a powerhouse in the division. I could see the prelims being a little bit slower, but then the prelim main event and the prelim co-main event is for sure going to be some fun stuff. Main event is going to be great, opening it up with those heavyweights who are always down to slug. They have that kill or be killed mentality, both of those guys. Now, let's talk about the main event. Let's talk about the stats when going into this fight. The records speak for themselves. Volkanovski 25-1. Islam Makhachev 23-1. I mean, these records are amazing. We got the number 1 pound for pound king in many people's eyes in Volkanovski, and then we got the devastating Dagestanian wrestler who mimics his mentor so well, but has a striking capability that many people didn't think that Khabib Nurmagomedov had for a long time. Now, this is going to be a fun fight, but here's the one thing that many people are talking about, and what many people aren't talking about is the height disadvantage for Volkanovski. At 5'6", he's taking on the 5'10" fighter in Islam Makhachev. Now, when you see both of them stand next to each other and when they're facing off against each other, you don't see that big of a difference. Now, here's the interesting part. The reach advantage goes to Volkanovski. This is the one thing that he had over Max Holloway. He has over many of the featherweight opponents that he's had. But that's going to be one to watch out for. Yes, he is a bit shorter, but he does have the reach advantage. So he might still be able to, keep away from Islam Makhachev, stay away from that wrestling, and pick and choose his shots instead of having to go super close to Islam Makhachev and having that threat of being taken down. Now, Volkanovski is no slouch when it comes to his wrestling. He might have the advantage in the striking. That's something that we're going to have to see. Like I mentioned, Islam Makhachev is not a carbon copy of Khabib Nurmagomedov. He has the striking ability that Khabib never utilized in his career, never really focused on much in his career. And like Khabib and like Khabib's late father, Abdulmanaf, said that Islam Makhachev would take on the mantle of taking over this lightweight division. And the way that he's going to do it is being overall amazing. Now, his wrestling is way better than his striking, but don't sleep on Islam Makhachev's striking. Now, let's go into the records of both of these gentlemen. You're going to see green wins all around. The last couple fights that Volkanovski had was a decision win against Max Holloway, TKO win against Korean Zombie, decision win against Brian Ortega, and then another decision win against Max Holloway. These Max Holloway fights are so important to look out for because Max was one of those fighters that we all believed could go up in weight and take over the other division. Now, Dustin Poirier had something else to say about that, but to take on one of the greatest featherweight champions of the world, who I believe took that mantle away from Jose Aldo after he beat him a couple of times. Max Holloway is no slouch. And what he did against Max Holloway twice, not just once, twice, is super amazing because given the fact that Max Holloway has spent so much time in the cage with Alexander Volkanovski and still wasn't able to, unlock the puzzle, which is Alexander Volkanovski, is super commendable for the Australian fighter. What a great streak that Alexander Volkanovski's been on. What a great couple wins that he's been on. It's been super fun. Now, let's look at Makhachev's record. Makhachev taking on and submitting Oliveira, and then TKOing Green, submitting Dan Hooker, and then submitting Moises. Now, this is something that I talked about before Islam Makhachev took on Charles Oliveira, was that the record is good. I mean, you got Dan Hooker on there, and you got Moises, but the rest of these fighters are not top level fighters, meaning that nobody comes out and no one's the Max Holloway in Makhachev's streak that he's been on. Meaning you don't have like an all-time great. But now that he has submitted and taken over the lightweight division the way that he has, and taking on Oliveira and taking him out the way that he did, was super special. And it just added to that career, and it took away any doubt when it comes to the record that Islam Makhachev has. Meaning that all the doubt that we had, like he hasn't fought anybody amazing, all this kind of stuff. He took out Oliveira, who's buzzsawing through the lightweight division. Now, let's go into more intricate stats about Alexander Volkanovski. Striking accuracy is 56%. That plays into the reach advantage that I was talking about previously. Having that reach advantage, having the camps that he has, and being able to pinpoint weaknesses in his opponents goes into that statistic. Now, 37% takedown accuracy, 74% takedown defense, which we're going to see how that holds up against Islam Makhachev. 73% takedown defense, meaning that yes, he has a 73% takedown defense, But that doesn't mean that he's going to have a 73% takedown defense against Islam Makhachev. That's just his past opponents that he's had. And with the Dagestani style of constantly one shot goes into another shot and they're all strung together, we're going to see how Alexander Volkanovski deals with that. 6.79 strikes landed per minute. He might have to bump that number up. He might have to really, put it depends on what game plan he goes with. Either you can put it on Islam Makhachev to back him up, but he's going to have to show some power in those strikes. And if he's not able to get Islam off of him, then he might have to turn down the strikes landed per minute to not give the openings to Islam Makhachev. We're going to have to see what happens in this fight. But those statistics are from the pound for pound grade. Now let's go into Islam Makhachev. Striking accuracy, 59%. Striking accuracy, takedown accuracy is 66%. Takedown defense is 89%. And then strikes landed per minute are 2.39 strikes landed per minute. Now, will Islam Makhachev turn that dial up a little bit more? We'll see when it comes to the strikes landed per minute. And then the striking accuracy is going to be really important. We're going to have to see. I see this as being one of those things where Islam Makhachev is going to throw the strikes. Every single fight starts on the feet. That's the thing that everybody says, but it's true. But will Islam Makhachev keep going at Volkanovski? Keep pressuring him. We'll see in this fight. I think this is going to be a super interesting fight. I think the whole card is going to be fun. Let's see what happens. I think we're going to have to see how Islam Makhachev deals with coming to Australia, fighting in Alexander Volkanovski's backyard with all of those fans in attendance in Perth, Australia. I think that this is going to be a fun one. We're going to have to see how Islam Makhachev deals with all of those Australian fans in that giant arena booing him because their countryman, the featherweight champion of the world, is trying to become a double champ and take over the both divisions. And this is, a lot of people are already saying that one of these fighters is going to truck over the other one. A lot of people are saying Islam Makhachev is going to buzzsaw through the featherweight champion of the world. But I think this is going to be a much more close fight than most people anticipate. I think it goes into some of those hard numbers that we just looked at. When it comes to the height, yes, that's one thing, but then you got to also think about the reach. You got to think about all of those takedown defense percentages. You got to take into account the strikes landed per minute numbers. I think when you look at all of it together, you look at the records, you look at all of it, that's where it becomes a much closer fight than many people anticipate. UFC 289, February 12th in Perth, Australia, February 11th, wherever you are. But whatever the days are, it's going to be a special one. It's going to be a great one. I mean, this is one that you got to all mark on your calendars because we could see greatness either way. Thank you for listening. I really appreciate it. Please like, subscribe, hit the bell notification, leave a comment below or send us an email. Really like to hear from you guys. Really appreciate it. And thank you for listening to the Body Punch Podcast. My name is Naz. Bye.